Hi and welcome to Tengy Reviews The Twilight Zone. I'm Tengy and today we're up to episode 4, The 16mm Shrine. The 16mm Shrine was written by Rod Serling and directed by Mitchell Leisen. The plot: an aging and forgotten film star of the 1930s, Barbara Jean Trenton, lives as a recluse lost in the past as she watches endless reruns of her old movies from her glory days. Can her agent tempt her to try a new film role and get her to re-engage with reality? Or is the lure of her lost youth too powerful to resist? Points of interest in this episode. Very strong opening to this story, immediately evoking Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard, but at the same time suggesting that Serling will take this theme in a very different direction. The preoccupation is once again with the passage of time, lost youth, regret, a sense of failure. Themes we have also seen explored in The Time Element and Mr. Denton on Doomsday. Also with the notion of wanting to go back in time to one's youth. Another theme Rod Serling will return to in the next episode, Walking Distance, and others. The set is magnificent here. Gothic and moody, it really has the feel of a glamorous mausoleum, which I think is exactly the point. Is this the most interior episode we have seen so far? Outdoor locations have been more central to the previous stories, I think. Fabulous moody lighting in this one too, especially the flickering movie projector effect. The ultra-modern, mid-century modern set of the movie producer's office is also sensational and a really great contrast to Barbara's stuck-in-the-past home. Again, Serling seems to be exploring identity here, as with the mirror scene in Where Is Everybody? The image of Barbara Jean standing beside her own projected image on the screen while mirroring the film's pose is a powerful one, suggesting in a simple but strong way that here is a character in psychological crisis of some kind. The conflict here is between Barbara's image of herself when young and her inability to see herself at her present age and to accept what that means. Her assistant Sally's reaction of horror, a real horror film-like reaction, is a really interesting way to sell the idea of how deep Barbara Jean's problems are under the beautiful surface of her movie star good looks. The reaction almost suggests a kind of haunting here, as though Barbara Jean is being haunted by the ghost of her own past, her own self. Sally witnesses this haunting and is horrified by it. But rather than the ghost actively haunting Barbara, it is Barbara who is clinging to the ghost of her own past. And this is a fairly startling concept. Barbara Jean's first outfit in this episode is sensational. For a woman supposedly trapped in the past, it does look pretty modern to me, that is, contemporary to 1959. Her second outfit with the lace panelling is also stunning, and the second pantsuit is amazing. Stunning costuming throughout this episode. The bit where the movie producer Marty Sall says, "Raise the veil" to Barbara and scrutinizes her face with a grimace, then says, "You'll play the mother," is really icky, and it says so much about attitudes towards women and how they are judged, treated, valued based solely on their appearance. Now, clearly an actor's appearance is important to the roles they are cast in, but Ida Lupino is 41 here and she looks sensational. The fact that in this fictional world she is regarded as well past her prime and aging, I think makes a strong statement. The producer's subsequent deriding of Barbara as just an aging broad with a scrapbook and saying that any part she gets will be charity really ripped the band-aid off how ugly these attitudes are, that a woman's worth in this movie world is dependent on her being young. But at the same time, Barbara's refusal to even consider playing an age-appropriate role is the psychological sticking point this story hinges on and shows the other side of the consequences of participating in a system where a woman's only currency is her youth. Barbara can't let this go because she feels she has nothing without her youth. And as far as the producers go, they seem to feel the same. She has internalized this value system. Watching her old films for her is like looking into a mirror that lies, allowing her to see herself as still young and still valued. Martin Balsam's rebuke to the producer, "Someday when you have gone over the hill, remind me to give you a swift kick in the teeth," further expands on this cruel double standard. Marty Sall is clearly much older than Barbara, yet he is regarded as far from being over the hill at this point in time. In fact, he's at the height of his power and influence. He's the one who gets to decide when a woman is past her prime. Marty Sall and Barbara were both working together at the studio in the 1930s. He is still going strong, at the top of the heap in fact, while she is all washed up because of her age. The story stops short of making this an issue particular to women though, as Barbara Jean's former co-star also says that his film career went down the drain with his youth, and Barbara is just as cruel to her former co-star about his aging as the studio boss is to her. Can we blame Barbara for wanting to stay home with the drapes drawn? This seems very much another of Serling's stories about characters caught in a system in which they cannot win. What's interesting about all of this though is that while it looks like Sunset Boulevard in its styling, in many ways it's more similar to and seems to actually anticipate 1963's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, in that it's about a film star's refusal to admit the passing of the years and the kind of psychological horror that stems from that. And the name Barbara Jean isn't a million miles away from Baby Jane, is it? Twilight Zone style coincidence, or was this story an influence on Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? "You've built yourself a graveyard here. You keep wishing for things that are dead," Barbara's agent Danny warns her, reinforcing the suggestion that Barbara is a kind of Miss Havisham figure, with all the horror dimensions that implies. Now this got me wondering, Miss Havisham, Baby Jane, Barbara Jean, this idea of the female character locked in the house refusing to admit the passage of time is a recurring one in books and films. But is there a male equivalent to this character? I want to see this as a story in which Serling tackles attitudes around women and aging, because I like to think he would have interesting thoughts on that subject. I think it touches on these themes, but it doesn't fully commit to them. And of course, he doesn't have to. He's more concerned with a compelling story than making a point here, as he should be, even if that point is suggested. But given the context, the references to Sunset Boulevard and Baby Jane, it does seem like a story that wouldn't be written about a male character. So I do like those dimensions of it in that it raises questions around attitudes to women and aging. And I find it interesting that the first Twilight Zone episode centered around a woman dares to touch on these issues, even if it's only as a part of what the story is doing. What I liked most about this story is the way that it sweeps us up and carries us a few steps into the horror genre. It's not a full horror story, but the moments that do touch on horror are very powerful, and it's the performances of Martin Balsam and Alice Frost that really do the heavy lifting here. Both give such impressively naturalistic performances throughout that when Serling trips that horror switch, their reactions carry us into a very chilling area. There is something really bold and exciting about these moments in the story. Is the implication that Barbara kills herself at the end. She has entered a world of ghosts, a world of the past, that is really a world of the dead. The suggestion at the end that they are watching a film of ghosts is really creepy, even though Jerry smiles at the thought that Barbara got what she wanted in the end. The other interpretation, that she actually travels back into the past, is equally interesting, harking back to the time element once again. But I like the ambiguity of this ending and the food for thought that it leaves us with. The cast and crew. Director Mitchell Leisen had a distinguished career as a Hollywood movie director, directing films with some of the biggest stars of the 30s, 40s and 50s. Lupino, as well as being a star of stage and screen, is of course notable for being one of the few female directors working in Hollywood in the 1950s. Lupino would actually go on to direct the Twilight Zone episode The Masks, giving her the distinction, I think, of being the only person to both star in and direct a Twilight Zone episode. And I think she's the only female director of a Twilight Zone episode too. Ida Lupino is 41 years old in this episode. 41! Martin Balsam had starred in the Twilight Zone precursor teleplay The Time Element. He really delivers the goods in this episode. Jerome Cowan, who plays the older Jerry Hearndan, appeared in over 100 films, perhaps most notably as Sam Spade's doomed partner in the private eye agency in The Maltese Falcon. John Clarke, who played young Jerry Hearndan, is most famous for his role in Days of Our Lives, in which he starred for an incredible 39 years. Alice Frost, who plays Sally, would also go on to appear in everybody's favourite Twilight Zone episode, It's a Good Life. She was a founding member of Orson Welles' Mercury Theatre on the Air and one of his favourite actresses. She is really superb here as Miss Trenton's personal assistant, and she shows how a gifted actor can almost steal the show in a supporting role, even among a cast as distinguished as this one. To sum up, I found this a very strong story with really interesting ideas in it. A story in the Twilight Zone between drama and horror, which is a very interesting place to be. If you have thoughts on this episode, I'd love to hear them in the comment section. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you would like and subscribe. I hope you can join me next time when we move on to Walking Distance. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.